Hello, everybody. We are starting relationships today. My favorite thing to teach is relationships. I think it's hilarious. I love speaking to my students about it. Um, it is section B of paper 3. So it's actually the first option paper you will sit. Now, by this point, you probably have already done a bit of schizophrenia, but schizophrenia is actually the third thing, not the second thing you take. So the order's a little bit different here as to how we teach it compared to what comes up in the exam. But what we're looking at today is the start of relationships and specifically evolutionary explanations for partner preferences. So how your evolution dictates who you end up with in terms of your mating partner, and how maybe your concept of what is attractive is determined by your evolution. So quite a bit to cover here. Couple of Quite a lot in AO1. AO3s are relatively straightforward, but let's make a start. So in order to start, you do need to understand the basic premise of evolution, and nothing explains this better than the peacock. Evolution is based on two things: survival and reproduction, and thus your behavior is geared towards ensuring your survival and like reproducing, basically. Did I say reproducing? I think I did. So the peacock is a great example of this, right? You've got two peacocks here. You've got this beautiful plumage on this peacock right here. Beautiful colours, gorgeous to look at. Sounds like I'm attracted to it, to be honest with you. And then you've got this thing down here, right? What one is the male? What one is the female? The male is the beautiful one because it's the male's job in the vast majority of species to attract the, don't take this the wrong way, very dull looking female. And so the male, in most species, the male of the species will be the strongest. They'll compete in the strength. They'll be the most beautiful. They'll be the most colourful. They'll be the best dancer, for example. And it's the male's job. And again, we're only talking heterosexually here, and that's a huge issue, by the way. It's a monumental issue, which we'll get to. But it, generally speaking, in terms of heterosexual natures across the animals, it is the male's job to attract the female. And the female generally is quite dull looking in most species. I'm not saying humans. So essentially, we will strive for a suitable partner to produce a strong offspring, and we are looking for these traits in the opposite or actually the same sex as well. Now, this is what is known as sexual selection. So another definition of sexual selection is a term you need to know. It's the traits or characteristics that we are sexually attracted to. Now, you also need to know natural selection here. Natural selection, which most of you know already, is this concept of survival of the fittest. Those organisms best adapted to their environment will ensure their survival. Now, one concept I do want to bring up to your mind, both of these are Darwinist ideas, Charles Darwin, both of these are Darwinist ideas. I would argue that there is a conflict between what helps you survive and what helps you reproduce. Some things that help you reproduce do not help survival. For example, big breasts. I was going to say boobs then, but luckily I avoided saying that. Big boobs. They are fantastic for reproduction in terms of maybe attracting a mate in, for example, and males are evolved to find breasts sexually attractive, so on and so forth. Humans are the only species to actually have permanent breasts, which I think is a fantastic fact, right? You don't see breasts on cows, do you? Right, which you've probably never thought about before. They have breasts, but only during certain times. Women have breasts pretty much the whole life. Oh, I completely forgot what I was talking about. I'm stuck on breast now. Focus. What were you saying? Oh, yes. Now, breasts are fantastic for reproduction, but they don't help you survive. If a tiger is running towards you, your big breasts are probably going to slow you down, if anything. So there is a conflict here in Darwinist ideas. There are some sexual things that help you, or some sexually attractive things that help you survive. That help you reproduce, but they don't help you survive. For example, the peacock right here, right? It's trying to get it on with this female peacock, who quite frankly is looking the opposite way. But if a predator were to jump out of the bush right here and run towards both of these peacocks, which peacock do you think will survive? Say they're equal distance away from the predator. It jumps out. Which peacock is going to survive? Is it the one that doesn't have much air resistance, or the one that does have much air resistance and is trying to run and fold away its many beautiful plumage, feathers, but can't? Some things that are sexually attractive do not help us survive. That is a big issue with Darwin, by the way, and it's a key evaluation that you do need to know. So, sexual selection in animals, though, is highly evident, and in males as well. To be frank, go to any club and you'll see males trying to be selected sexually with their, sexy dancing, and then maybe showing off of their generous resources and things like that. But maybe it's the most colourful, right? Maybe it's the one who is the best dance. If you're in my class, I will try to demonstrate this dance, for example, and I will be out of breath. I am every year. Maybe it's the one with the biggest horns, for example, or the best strength. But basically, animals attract mates in very similar ways to humans. The question being, are we the same as animals? The short answer is yes, basically. Right? Females choose males and are heterosexual. Don't kid yourself otherwise. So, oh god, that's embarrassing. There's a photo of me's got on the PowerPoint. But consider a male who is good at dancing, good moves, good hips, for example. He's toned, muscular, got the triangle. Broad shoulders, slightly narrow hips. Not if they were in a true triangle, that would be quite concerning. But an ambitious, maybe an intellectual man as well, and a female who is high in bodily attractiveness, and a female who has a strong ability to empathize. Now you'll notice that what is supposedly good here and here is very different, and to be quite honest with you, potentially very offensive. If we're focusing on this idea about women being bodily attractive, curvy, 0.7 waist to hip ratio, that's doing one or two things. Firstly, that could be socially sensitive, because a woman who is not high in bodily attractiveness and knows she doesn't have a 0.7 waist to hip ratio may be quite offended by the fact that science is calling her unattractive. The other thing it is saying it has beta bias. That there is, not beta bias, alpha bias. Potentially there's an exaggeration here between the sexes, but more on this in good time. So these are all traits that we have become attracted to. You may argue, and this is important, that we have been told by our environment, by our culture, that is attractive. But that's not what we're going to be arguing today. We're going to be arguing today that you are biologically pre-programmed to find this attractive, because anyone who has these, yes, please. Yes, please. I would like me some of that. So, sperms and eggs. Sperms and eggs, which I think we can all agree is the worst of the McMuffins. Sperm. Fine, doesn't matter. So it's quite important here to highlight the sex differences in reproductive material. I want you to think about what reproductive material you have, regardless of whether you want kids. How do you think that material that you have affects your behavior? So let me just start with men. right? Men, and quite frankly, we don't get thanks for this, men can produce roughly 100 million sperm in a single ejaculation. Anywhere between 15 to 300 million is actually true, but these are the super fertile people. Don't look these people in their eye because they will get you pregnant. But generally speaking, it's 100 million sperm, right? And not only is it 100 million sperm per ejaculation, which is amazing, pat on the back, but well done. But not only is that amazing, but we can do that several times a day. So a consequence of this, which you need to note, is that male reproductive material is cheap and inexpensive and easily available. If we have sex with someone who's not particularly maybe attractive, for example, and I'm playing devil's advocate here, by the way, someone who isn't particularly attractive, and we don't get them pregnant, well, I don't matter. I can go again in 3 hours with someone else, right? I'm playing devil's advocate there. Please don't shoot the messenger. So for a man to increase his chances of reproductive success, he can actually physically have sex with multiple partners, though I'm constantly told this is socially unacceptable. So again, I'm playing devil's advocate here. I will do this the whole time, by the way. So male reproductive material is cheap. Doesn't matter if we have sex and don't get someone pregnant. We can have a go again in a minute, right? Just give me a couple of hours, maybe a little nap, and I'll be good to go again. So that's quite important because it plays into male behavior. You can argue males' promiscuous, sex-driven behavior is a result of the fact that their reproductive material, don't matter. We can go again, go again, go again, go again. Whereas females, on the other hand, only produce. Now, this is not strictly true, but let's just keep it simple for scientific purposes. But women produce one egg a month, or one follicle a month. Or rather, they produce multiple follicles, but there's usually one egg that comes from it. Right, but anyway, there are particular times in the month-long cycle where she is most fertile, about 14 days through your cycle. And it takes quite a while to get there. One egg, and you've got to be protective as shit as that egg. Because if an ugly sperm gets in, no thank you, right? So you need to protect that egg. Because quite frankly, you in olden times, you may have to raise that baby. And let's face it, nobody wants an ugly baby. Because what good does an ugly baby do? You've tainted your gene pool, for example. And this is what the theory is saying. It's not my personal opinion. The other thing, and this is amazing, by the way, research has shown that at 14 days, women are at their most attractive. Their breasts are symmetrical, which that does happen. I've checked. Let's not go there. Their face is also symmetrical, and you might say, like, not to the point where like anyone would consciously notice. It's not like you would walk in during your ovulation and someone's gonna be like, "Who the hell are you?" Like, you're not that different, but your face is as symmetrical. Why is symmetry important? That's what attractiveness is. Attractiveness is simply how symmetrical your face is at its most basic, really, and you can measure that. I wouldn't recommend doing it just in case you don't like the results. So, also, firstly, why are women more attractive at 14 days? Because at their most attractive, they will pull a male partner in to increase their chances of getting pregnant. That's why they're most attractive at 14 days. Also, research has been done multiple times. Every day, women had to wipe their armpit with a tissue for the 28-day cycle. They were mixed up, and random men had to sniff every tissue. Guess what one always came out as the most pleasant smell? Day 14. Because it's another way to bring males in. So females are at their most attractive at 14 days, but they have to be protective. They only have a limited life of up to maximum 25 years of fertility, whereas men can keep going, doesn't matter. But you're 80, no, I can keep going, right? So Women have to be more selective. A consequence of all of this, women are more selective than men when it comes to choosing a partner. And you see this on Tinder. You see this on Tinder. If I were to give 100 profiles to a heterosexual female, she would only swipe right to say she liked on anywhere between 5 and 15 of the 100. She is picky. Whereas, because she has to be, she's selective is a better word. Picky is a bit out of order, actually. Men, on average, will swipe right 90 out of 100 times because they think they take what's called a scattergun approach, right? And more on that later. So, so that's all important so far, and you do need to know this. But a consequence of all this leads to intra and intersexual selection. So intra, as we can see here, means within, right? So sexual selection within a sex. So it's this idea, one sex competes with itself for access to the other sex. In this case, in human case, I should say, males compete with other males for access to the females. If you're male, and we'll stick with heterosexual here. Again, we'll come into the homosexual, bisexual, asexual issue with this theory. If you're a heterosexual male and you go to the gym, even if you've got a girlfriend, I know for a fact, and you know for a fact, let's be honest, that you're only going to the gym to make yourself more attractive. It isn't to lose weight. It isn't to gain fitness. And if it is to gain fitness, you're only gaining fitness so you are more attractive. Do not lie to me, because we all know that it's true, right? So males compete with each other. How do they compete with each other? We'll come on to those in a second. But the other one is intersexual selection. So inter means between. And it's the concept that one sex will always do the choosing of the other sex. It's not like, oh, they met and they gazed and they mutually decided to get into a relationship. No, it's not. Females choose males. Females choose males. If a female on a night out wanted to have a one night stand, just wanted to have sex with someone, it's easy to. It's so easy for a female to have a one night stand. And that's the way society and biology is. All she has to do is look at the 5 people who've offered to buy her drinks so far and go, nah, yeah, go on then, you, fine, why not? Right? For a male to have a one night stand, according to this theory, and playing devil's advocate slightly, he has to be generous with money. He has to be incredibly good looking. He has to be lucky in the right space at the right time. And chances are males will have a one night stand probably 5% of the time they actually aim to have one. Whereas females, she wanted to have a one night stand, she could. And that's because of inter and intrasexual selection. Males compete with each other. Females do not compete with each other. Yes, there are loads of examples about love triangles, but females generally do not compete with one another for access to males. Doesn't really happen. Students are always like, yeah, but my friend, no. That's not quite how it actually happened, despite what your male friend tells you. So how do males and females compete with each other? What are their strategies, right? What are their strategies? Some of these do not paint males in a great light. I'm going to go through these, and you may want to note some of these down in a bit more detail. So both male and female will court each other. Courtship is dating. It's what your nan or granddad calls dating. Are you courting? Courtship rituals basically is dating. It's a try before you buy type scheme for males and females. It's a way to show off your genetic prowess, to show off your personality, to show off your resources, to show off your empathy and your kindness and your humor, for example. It's almost a try before you buy. So these are strategies that males and females engage in. I used to date quite a lot, and I've got to be honest, I used to love dating. It's a great way to meet people, but it really is a try before you buy. Now, other strategies that males have is size. Males compete with each other to gain size, because females generally will find that actually a protector or a partner who is has the potential to protect them is actually attractive. Now, this has gone off the boil a little bit with the whole dad bods thing, right? I think dad bods is more of an environmental thing. We're being told to like and not to body shame people, so on and so forth. But I don't think there's nothing genetic or evolutionary about dad bods whatsoever. There's nothing evolutionary about them. Sperm competitions. I don't know if any of you have ever entered one of these, but males have evolved to have bigger testicles and faster swimming sperm. So, and this kind of makes sense, smaller testicles with crappy sperm have generally died out. Generally, not exclusively, but they've generally died out, because even if you are attractive and you're male and you're funny and you're generous with your money, if your testicles have annoying, shitty sperm, then you probably aren't going to get someone pregnant anyway. And thus, your crappy testicles are going to die out with you. Again, that's the theory. Again, I'm only playing devil's advocate, but again, that is it's probably logically true. Here's where males don't do too well, and I'm kind of ashamed to be males. We have two strategies that kind of contradict each other. So what we do is we mate guard. And again, I'm not saying I personally don't feel like I do this, right? I don't feel like I do this, but apparently males do. We keep a close eye on our female partners to prevent them being unfaithful. You can argue that no man has ever been 100% sure that the kid is his. It hasn't come out of him, right? You could argue that, right? You can see that logical argument. Yes, most men are 99.9% sure, and if it comes out and look like them, etc., etc. Women are 100% sure it's theirs because they remember the labour and they remember seeing a head emerge from them, right? That's the sort of thing you don't forget. So what males do is, because they cannot ever be 100% sure that it is their males. And I've got some amazing statistics, by the way. I remember this from my uni days, and I don't want you getting in your head about this, but average research shows if you take 100 children and test the DNA between them and who they think their dad is, 8 out of those 100 will establish that their dad is not actually their dad. In some cases, in small samples, it can go up to 50%, but that's a bit extreme. But on average, 8% of children are not actually the children of those who they think their dad is. And I know males probably do cheat more than females, but female cheating is relatively high still, and it actually can lead to raising kids that you don't know that your partner doesn't know aren't his. So what males do to prevent this is we mate guard. So you may check phones, which, by the way, is absolutely unacceptable. You may put off any of her male friends from getting quite close. You might be jealous of them, for example. Whilst we do that, sneak copulation. We try improve our chances of creating a further genetic line, a Genghis Khan style line, in terms of reproducing quite a lot, by being unfaithful. Well done, men. We've really, really done well there, right? So bad. So these are things that females do. I feel like I'm saying a lot of offensive things, but if you are getting offended, I'm just playing devil's advocate, because this theory is quite offensive. Females, on the other hand, have what we can establish is the best name for hypothesis ever, the sexy sons hypothesis, which is the idea that females want their children to be as attractive as possible so that then they will go on to reproduce kids. So the theory suggests that females will try get as sexy a man as possible. Punch above your weight, girl. Absolutely. But there's a problem with that, which we'll come on to in a second. The handicap hypothesis. I love the handicap hypothesis. Right. On one hand, it makes no sense whatsoever. So I'm not going to say the proper term, but F-boys. rhymes with duck boys. Some girls in my class love someone who treats them a bit horribly, to be honest. And it's always two or three girls out of the class, and they usually say things like, "I just like the drama. I just keeps it fresh." Which fair enough. You can like what you like. I have no problem with that. But basically, the handicap hypothesis is a strategy by females to go out with people who are not necessarily good for them. The reason why they do this, and a good example is people who take drugs. A good example is people who find drug taking attractive. Because if your partner can take a shitload of drugs and function in everyday society still, you know that if the shit hits the fan, this person can deal with adversity. This person's not going to fold. This person can function under pressure. There's a group in London and other major cities. I can't remember what their name is, but they're high flyers. They're young, up and coming stars in the legal field, in the medical field, in the security field, for example. But they go out on absolute binges in London, drugs, alcohol, etc., and they turn up to work on Monday every day. Some women, a minority, but some women find that attractive, and that's what the handicap hypothesis is saying. You kind of want someone who's going to be a bit brash. You kind of want someone who can deal with adversity, because when the shit hits the fan, you want to know that they've got your back and you've got theirs. And obviously females court as well. So here's the dilemma essentially that women face with men. Do they go for a cad or do they go for a dad? Ideally, you'd have a cadad, right? But not all of us live in a dream world. A cad is a low investment male who is absolutely beautiful, but they are not going to hang around. So you're going to get the genes, but you're not going to get the resources or the investment. On the other hand, you have a dad who is high investment, going to get those resources, but they're not the most attractive. Ideally, you would obviously be able to get with someone who is rich and beautiful, but like I say, that only happens in our dreams for most of us. So these are the strategies that women face, and they have to have a balance and act. What do they want? When do they want it? Who do they want to be with, for example? Let's move on to physical attractiveness, because there's a lot of different ideas here. I can't look at Scarlett Johansson too much because she's the most beautiful creature that's ever happened. But physical attractiveness is essentially... sorry, I'm hiding Scarlett Johansson. Look at her. Very nice shaped head. That makes me sound like a psychopath. Stop looking at me. I just need to change it. So physical attractiveness is quite important here, right? Let's face it, personality doesn't scream itself across a dance floor. The thing that pulls you in, and you need to know this for the next bullet point, but the thing that pulls you in, let's be honest, is how physically attractive they are. It's the first thing you notice. Nobody notices determination or humour from across a dance floor. So physical attractiveness, despite what people say, is a very important factor. But there's an alpha bias here, because what men find attractive is very different to what women find attractive. So for men, they generally prefer younger females heterosexually. They generally do, because the younger you are, the more fertility opportunities you have, the more eggs you have in your basket. I once made that joke to an ex-girlfriend who was 5 years younger than me, but did not find it funny, actually. Is now an ex, actually. So, but a younger woman will also have more time to look after the offspring, and it could explain why the absolute majority of men are older than their female partners. If I ask you, I'd say 2 or 3 of you have an older mum than a dad. Candy is 2.5 years older than me, so that's quite rare for me, actually. I've only ever been out with one other female who is older than me. All of them have been younger than me. Women are attracted to men with bigger resources, though. Now, that's the real controversial bit, I think, because females, we live in a completely different society now. But someone who can provide for the family, is kind, and has the generosity to share the resources. According to this theory, there's no point in going out with a millionaire if he is not going to share that million with you. So, again, very, very controversial, and I'm fully aware of how controversial it is. Now, which one is the most attractive? This is not an opportunity for you to get your judging hat on, but quite clearly, the one who is more attractive is on the left, because she has a more symmetrical face. And you might think, well, the differences are minimal. Yes, they are. Now, I think that eye is so much lower than that eye. Maybe it's because of the way I'm tilting it, for example. I don't know, but the more symmetrical the face, the better. The better. And that leads us to go to not only facial symmetry, but also a very sexy waist to hip ratio. Waist to hip ratio, measure your waist, you measure your hip at the widest point, and the one that we find most attractive is what's called the hourglass figure, 0.7. So your waist is 70% the width of your hips. Why do we prefer that? Because this person right here would be able to shoot out children very easily and has a much more reduced chance of dying in birth. Now, women who are straight down, like this woman right here, in evolutionary times, if you want to call it that, probably may have died, much more likely to have died, because they can't get the baby out that much. They don't have childbearing hips. Luckily, with today's medical advances, very few people die in childbirth, but that person has a waist hip ratio of about 0.95 according to my calculations, whereas that one there is, quite frankly, very attractive, great childbearing hips, and would probably shoot the child out, right? So waist hip ratio is quite important. It's built in us, by the way. Males are pre-programmed to find that attractive. We don't go to boys' school where they have a picture of women up and go 0.7, 0.7 and hit us when we like the 0.9s. This is built in us. There was a story of, I was admittedly a little bit of a perv, but there was a story a few years ago when I was working in a shop. This is about 15 years ago at the time I'm recording now. It's a long time ago. I'd bent down to pick something up. I was working in Paper Chase many years ago. I'd bent down to pick something up, and a woman walked past me wearing a figure-hugging dress, about my age, a figure-hugging dress, and she had a perfect 0.72 waist-to-hip ratio. That was perfect waist-to-hip ratio. I didn't even know that I just watched her. I just tracked her with my eyes. Didn't even realise, to be honest. And then two of my colleagues saw me perving on her, who were both female, by the way, and started having a go at me. And I was like, why are you having a go at me? Like, what was I doing? And they were like, you were staring at the woman. I was like, did not even notice. Sorry, did not even notice. Right? We are pre-programmed to find it attractive. Now, I've got 4 pieces of research here. I would say no 2 of them. I'm not going to go into them in any detail because there's not a lot to them. Buss found that men preferred younger women across 37 different cultures. So again, it's showing that this is not a cultural thing. This is a biological thing. I do remember, but I went to Fiji a few years ago. Worst place in the world, by the way. I really, sorry if you're Fijian, but too many stories there. But in Fiji, the women are big. They are big, right? The bigger they are, the more attractive they are. There's none of this waist to hip ratio of 0.7. The bigger they are, the more attractive they are. And it took me a while to learn that. I remember my friend Michael, who worked at the Fijian resort, he saw this woman coming down towards him who was large. I mean, by Western standards, she was big. And he was like, whoa, she's beautiful. And I was like, that's a bit harsh, but okay. And he went, no, I love her. And I was like, okay. And I thought he was joking because by Western standards, but he loved her. So there are some cultural differences. It can't all be genetic. There must be some biological, genetic ones. But anyway, I'm going on. Swami and Furnham are the ones who said about the 0.7 waist hip ratio. Men tend to lie about certain things that make them more attractive, for example. So men will lie about their income, men will lie about their sexual prowess, men will lie about their prospects because they're trying to attract someone. It's like what you're going to do in your personal statements is you're probably going to lie a little bit about things you've done, blah, 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 but in order to attract universities. So I'm not saying lying is good, but let's look at some evaluations. So the first one here is that, and this is the biggie. This is the biggie. Everything I've covered so far does not explain both long distance relationships, homosexual relationships, couples who don't want children, and asexual and bisexual relationships. So, and that's a huge amount of relationships, by the way. That's a monumental. Some of you don't want children. Some of you don't want children. So, what would you find attractive? Because you find the things that would ensure your reproduction, but you don't want kids. So this theory doesn't explain you very well at all. At all. I'm not going to go for that point because it's debatable. But this whole thing about makeup is a perfect example here. Women, according to this theory, should look as young as possible to attract the male. That is the argument for why women are the majority sex who wear makeup. When you're when you're younger, my understanding is that you wear makeup to appear older. You know, when you're 13 or 14, you might wear makeup to make yourself look older. But as you get older, the theory goes anyway, and as I say, I know this is controversial, but the theory goes is people wear makeup to look younger, and that supports that evolutionary theory. I feel like I can hear you. Are you listening? I thought I heard it. So the big one here as well is a lot of what we've covered today doesn't really explain the fact that women can go out and financially support themselves. I'm not being funny, but what I think we're quite close to creating artificial sperm. When that happens, literally, what is the point of a man? Literally, what are we need? Like there was no need for us anymore. I don't know if science supports this, but I'm pretty sure we're going to die out. So, yeah, I don't know how you would phrase that in point. There is a model point just here. You probably do want to look at this and pause it. It is about that makeup point. And there's also another couple of ones here as well. I've gone through this point at the beginning. Make sure you have got that down. And also, this is quite a basic point, I think, but there's a hell of a lot of evidence that from the animal kingdom to back up all of this. There's a hell of a lot. It's females who pick the males in the animal kingdom. Nobody doubts that. Literally watch any David Attenborough program and you will see some bird trying to get off with another bird and by dancing and trying to get her attention and stuff. Male competition, we see this. So we see this in seals. We see this in all sorts of animals, to be honest. So there's a hell of a lot of animals that actually support this theory. And this is really a summing up. So this is probably one of the hardest questions you may get with this bullet point, essentially describe and evaluate evolutionary explanations. So in your AO1, there's a final term which I almost missed, anisogamy. One of my students is walking by. I didn't know they lived there. Anisogamy. So it's the concept of what I talked about earlier about men having different reproductive material to women. So you talk about that, and intra-sexual selection, talk about the strategies, for example, and that pretty much is it for this bullet point. One of my favorite things to teach is this, so I'll go into a bit more detail online. If you disagree with this, if you're female and you think, actually, I'm not that picky, I'll have anything, then let me know. If you're a male who you think actually you're more picky than the vast majority of males, then yeah, tell me. These are only theories. If you have been offended by anything in this video, what I would say is I would understand your reservations about it. It is a socially sensitive theory, and that has got to be one of your main evaluations. So hope you found this useful. Make sure you got everything down, make your flashcards, and we will move on to factors affecting attraction next week. Peace out.